Hello friends, so let us continue our lecture on distinguishing minerals from all the rest of the materials that are found on the earth crust. So just a reminder, we are still in the introductory module of this course, so that's the reason why we are trying to get into the characteristic features of minerals and how one can differentiate it from all the rest of the materials that can be found on the surface of the earth. Now, when we began by considering the different features that typifies a mineral, we saw that one of the features is that minerals exhibit a long range, regular arrangement. So, minerals, even though they are naturally occurring inorganic compounds, they exhibit a long range at regular arrangement. We quantified this long range by stating that even though there might be a regularity that can be observed in the local arrangement of the entities, we can say a material is long range or it exhibits a long range arrangement only when that local arrangement or local regularity it extends over the range of 10 to the power 4 times. So this is how we quantified the long range arrangement. Now we moved into the term of, or we began considering what it means to be a regular arrangement. So for that we introduced two vectors, vector A and B. In order to consider its direction, we included an angle theta. So theta, it quantifies the direction of vector A and B with respect to each other. And now, depending on the magnitude and the angle between the vectors, we saw in two dimensions. It is something that is that needs a significant amount of reminiscence. That is, we are focusing, or we largely focus on so far. We largely focused on two dimension. So when we consider these two vectors, the angle between them and its magnitude, particularly in two dimension, or when we restrict ourselves in two dimension, we found there are different arrangement of the entities that are possible. So there are different regular arrangements of the entities that are possible. We defined the regular arrangement by using these vectors and the angle between them by stating that when there is a definite relation between these vectors, the magnitude of the vectors and the angle between them, it is possible for us to recreate the arrangement of the atom or arrangement of any entity, be it ion or atom, over the entire plane. So that is how we define two dimension. So if you have a crystal and in the plane of that crystal you have the regular arrangement of the atoms, it is possible for us to capture the entire regular arrangement of the atoms by just considering the magnitude of these vectors and the angle between them. And when we do so, we arrived at 5 different possible lattice planes, 5 different possible arrangement of the entities in a given plane on a crystal. So if we, so these 5 different planes that we got, or these 5 different lattice planes along with the lattice points that we arrived, can be referred to as square lattice, rectangular lattice, parallelogram. So these are lattice planes. We have so far restricted ourselves to two-dimensional setup. So therefore we have square, rectangular and parallelogram. And in the rectangular, in addition to the primitive rectangular wherein the entities occupy the corners of the rectangle, we have a centered rectangle, and in parallelogram, when theta is of definite angle, then we arrive at hexagonal arrangement. So crystal exhibit a long range regular arrangement. A regular arrangement means this regularity can be captured just by considering two vectors and the angle between them. And when we do that for a two-dimensional setup, when we just consider not the entire crystal but just a plane, it is possible for us to arrive at 5 different lattice systems. So 5 different lattice planes. So we have square, rectangle, parallelogram, centered rectangle and hexagon. Now each of these different lattice planes and the arrangement of the atoms in them, or ions of course, in them can be captured by considering just a few number of atoms or entities. Just by considering the regular arrangement of few number of atoms or entities, we will be able to establish this 5 different lattice planes. These few number of atoms that is representative of the entire lattice plane is what we refer to as the unit mesh. So the reason we are considering the entire, or we are revisiting the entire concepts that we have considered so far, is because in this lecture we will be extending it to 3 dimension. So that's the reason why we are considering whatever understanding we have gained so far and we are revisiting it. So if by just considering a 2-dimensional system, just by taking or by involving 2 vectors, its magnitude and the angle between them, we were able to create 5 different lattice systems in 2 dimension, and a small group of atoms, a small arrangement of atoms that is representative of these different lattice planes, we refer to them as the unit mesh. Now, when we have the regular arrangement of the atoms, we saw in the previous lecture that these regular arrangement of the atoms, they exhibit what we refer to as the symmetries. So because of the regular arrangement of the atom, we have symmetries that exist in the arrangement of the entities within a crystal. So we consider 2 vectors, angle between them, we were able to establish a lattice plane. Depending on the magnitude of this vector and the angle between them, there were 5 different, we are able to establish 5 different lattice planes, and the positions wherein these atoms or ions they occupy, we refer to that as lattice point. We can consider few number of lattice point that is representative of the entire lattice plane that we refer to as the unit mesh. Because of this regular arrangement of the lattice points in a given plane, we have what we refer to as the symmetries. Now there are different ways, so we saw in the previous lecture there are different form of the symmetries. One is translation symmetry. It is quite straightforward. What we mean by translation symmetry is that when we consider a local arrangement of the atoms or local arrangement or local set of lattice points, and when we translate it or when we repeat it, for instance in 2 dimension, when we repeat it all over the plane, and if we are able to recreate the lattice plane, then that particular system, it exhibits translation symmetry. This is something that we saw in the previous lecture. So this local arrangement is what we refer to as motif, and unit mesh is a form of motif. So we have a motif, and this motif, if we are able to repeat it in, since again we are restricting ourselves to 2 dimension, if we are able to repeat this motif along the plane, and if we are able to recreate the lattice plane, these different lattice planes that we are considering, if we are able to recreate them, then it means that that particular lattice plane, it exhibits translation symmetry. Now the other symmetry that we discussed last time was the reflection symmetry. So the reflection symmetry is nothing but when you have a regular, or when you consider a local regular arrangement of the atoms, like in case of unit mesh, or it is also considered a motif. Now in such a case, when you consider a particular plane and you place a mirror, then what we observe is one resection of this unit mesh is the mirror image of the other. So if such a behavior is observed, or if such such an arrangement is observed, then we refer to that unit mesh, and that particular plane as where we attribute reflection symmetry to that particular unit mesh along this particular plane. So we saw in the previous lecture that the square unit mesh, it exhibits reflection symmetry along the vertical plane, horizontal plane, and also diagonal plane. So what we mean by that is, when you place a mirror in the vertical plane, horizontal plane, and the diagonal plane, you would observe that the one region or one aspect of this unit mesh is the mirror image of the other. So in such a case, we refer to that as, or such the reflection or such an arrangement of the entities, we refer to that as the reflection symmetries. So depending on the arrangement of the atoms in the lattice. Depending on the lattice point, the characteristic lattice point, the reflection symmetries vary. We saw in the previous lecture that even though in the square mesh, for instance, let us just consider a square mesh here. Even though in a square mesh, if you place the mirror here, or even if you place the mirror here and also along the diagonals, this region, the region that is split by the placement of the mirror, is the mirror image of the other. So you have by placing mirrors on 3 different orientations, you were able to create 2 sections that are mirror image or mirror images of each other. So that means we are able to identify the 3 mirror planes for a square mesh. However, when we consider a rectangular mesh, even though we were able to observe, or it is understandable for us that this section is the mirror image of this section, and if you place the mirror horizontally, and it is we can observe that this section here is the mirror image of this section here. When we place the mirror along diagonal orientation, then we would see that this section is not the mirror image of this section, because when you project this section here and when you consider the reflection of this section here, you would realize that this reflection, it falls at this point. So the way to identify the reflection of this point is just by considering a straight line that is the shortest distance to the mirror, and identifying the length of that, say d, and then plotting the same line here of length d and placing the mirror or placing the reflected lattice point here. So that is how you would be able to ascertain the mirror image. So when you do that, this mirror image of this lattice point here does not coincide with this actual lattice point. So that means the rectangle does not exhibit reflection symmetry along the diagonal. So therefore, the mirror planes that offer the reflection symmetry are just 2 in a rectangle. So you have 3 mirror planes in a square and 2 mirror planes in a rectangle. So therefore, even though a system, it exhibits reflection symmetry, even though a unit mesh or a lattice plane exhibits a reflection symmetry, the level or degree of symmetry exhibited by each of the system is typical to it. What we mean by that is, if the square symmetry, if a square lattice plane and a rectangular lattice plane, even though they both exhibit a reflection symmetry, the square exhibits a higher level of reflection symmetry when compared to the rectangle. The reason we can say that is because in square we have 3 mirror planes. However, in rectangle there are only 2. This can be applied for other lattice planes that we have considered, and we can say which one has the highest degree of, or which one exhibits the highest degree of reflection symmetry. So when it is possible for us to place, or when we observe a larger number of mirror planes, when it is possible for us to place the mirrors along different direction and still we are able to recover the mirror images that are coincident with the lattice points, then it means that that particular system exhibits higher level of reflection symmetry. So ideally, when we say that this particular system exhibits higher level of reflection symmetry, only when this system allows us to place the mirror in different orientation and still we are able to observe the reflection symmetries. And finally, one other symmetry that we considered in the previous lecture was the rotation symmetry. So the rotation symmetry is something that is similar to that of a translation symmetry to a certain extent. In translation symmetry, we just consider a local arrangement of the atoms or ions, and then we just repeat it along the planes in order to establish the entire lattice plane. Now in case of rotation symmetry, we do the translation, we consider this translation aspect, but in addition to translation, we rotate the local arrangement of the atoms that we have considered. So in the previous lecture, what we saw, we considered 2 different unit meshes. we consider a square unit mesh and a rectangular unit mesh. We saw that when we consider a square unit mesh of this form, so in order to indicate our rotation of this form, then we found that this square unit mesh, it exhibits four-fold rotation symmetry, meaning you can rotate it 4 times before we get this original configuration. So let us refer to this as original configuration O. Now it is possible for us to rotate this square mesh 4 times. So this will be our first rotation. After the first rotation, the position of the entity here will be placed here. In the second rotation, the position of the entity will be here. And finally, the fourth rotation in the third rotation, the position of the entity will be here. And finally, you will get back to the original configuration. So this means it is possible for us to rotate the square mesh 4 times without changing its form, without changing its overall shape, and we can, at the fourth rotation, it is possible for us to get back to its original configuration. And this is what we refer to as the four-fold rotational symmetry. And we saw in case of a rectangular unit mesh, it is possible for us to do the same operation. However, the rectangular unit mesh, it just exhibits two-fold, as opposed to a square unit mesh, the rectangular unit mesh, it exhibits just two-fold symmetry, meaning you will be able to just rotate it twice to get back to its original configuration, and each rotation, even though it changes the positions of the atom, the configuration still remains the same. So this is what we mean by rotation symmetry. So these symmetries, they come about because we have the irregular arrangement of the atoms. Before moving on to the extension of these understanding through 3 dimension, let us consider one rather a complicated rotation symmetry. So let us consider a parallelogram and see how does the rotation symmetry appears in a parallelogram. And once we have gained understanding on that, we will then consider the extension of these concepts through to 3 dimension. So in order to do that, please allow me to move into a different setup. So far I've been writing. So let's consider a different setup in order to understand the rotation symmetry that is exhibited by the parallelogram. So yeah, what we have here is a parallelogram unit mesh. Now let us understand the rotation symmetry of this parallelogram unit mesh. So in order to do that, let us create an identical parallelogram. So I'll just copy paste it and create an identical parallelogram. And in order to differentiate this, we have now created a parallelogram, and we have created a clone of it, an identical representation of it. In order to differentiate between these two, let us use a different fill color, and let us increase the transparency of the offspring or the cloned parallelogram, so that we are able to understand its rotation. So essentially what we now have is 2 different parallelograms that are superimposed on each other. So one is, so let me show you. So one is in gray color, the other one is transparent and it's in red. So essentially what we need to understand is we would like to understand the rotation symmetry exhibited by the parallelogram. So now these 2 parallelograms are rather superimposed. Now let us try to rotate the parallelogram that is transparent and that is in red. So let us treat it as a square and then rotate it by 90 degrees. So if I do that, as you can see here, when I rotate it by 90 degrees, what you essentially observe is we are not able to get the original configuration of the parallelogram. So this is the original configuration that is in gray, and when I rotate it by 90 degree, I am not able to get the original configuration. So what this means is that then parallelogram will not exhibit, or it does not exhibit, similar rotational symmetry as the square. So the parallelogram does not exhibit a 2-fold rotational symmetry. Now let us try to consider or rotate it as we do for the rectangular unit mesh. And when we do that, when we rotate it by an additional 90 degrees, so when we rotate it by an additional 90 degrees, so essentially we were when in the previous condition we were rather here, and when we do a rotation of an additional 90 degree, we could see that the parallelogram or the rotated parallelogram, it overlaps with its original form. So parallelogram, it exhibits a symmetry or a rotational symmetry that is similar to that of the rectangle, meaning it exhibits a two-fold rotational symmetry. Now when we consider the parallelogram and rotated by 90 degrees, the parallelogram will not overlap with its original form, that is indicated by gray. However, when we continue rotating it, when we keep on rotating it, and then we ensure that we arrive at a point wherein the rotation is of not just 90 degrees but 180 degrees, then we will be able to overlap or assume the original configuration. So it means that similar to rectangle, the parallelogram exhibits a two-fold rotational symmetry. So this is just a mode for you to understand how one can determine the rotational symmetry of the different unit meshes. So you can just, this is all done in some sort of a variant of a PowerPoint. So all you need to do is consider a unit mesh, create a replica of it, try rotating it, and assume or see under which condition are you able to observe the complete overlap, like what we saw in case of the parallelogram, and under which condition you were able to get into the original form, like the exact position of the lattice points. So all this can be done just by using a PowerPoint or a variant of it. So this will allow you to understand, to gain a greater degree of understanding of the rotational symmetry. Now it is also important for us to note that since we are considering just two dimension, the axis of rotation is rather limited. So all the axis of rotation that we have considered is something like this. So this is the axis of rotation that we have considered. Now since in this lecture we are trying to extend this to 3 dimension, so you would be seeing that there are more than one axis of rotation that are possible. So this is also another characteristic feature of the rotation symmetry. Like in case of reflection symmetry, we have definite mirror planes which enable the reflection of the different sections. Here in case of the rotation symmetry, we have specific rotation axis. So only along that specific rotation axis you will observe the rotation symmetry. In case of reflection planes, you have definite mirror planes, and only along these mirror planes you will be able to observe the rotation symmetry, or rather reflection symmetry. The mirror images are observed only when you consider specific orientation. Similarly, in case of the rotation symmetry, we observe the rotation symmetry only when you consider specific rotation axis. And again, since we have restricted ourselves to 2 dimension, these rotation symmetries or rotation axes are also restricted, and this is one of the rather straightforward rotation axes that we have considered so far. So essentially, so far what we have considered is, or what we have looked into is that by beginning with what a long range regular arrangement means, from that beginning we were now able to extrapolate ourselves or move into the symmetries that one can observe in a 2-dimensional plane of a crystal. Now we would be extending the same concept or same understanding to 3 dimension. Like before, we will be beginning with what we mean by the regular arrangement, because the long range, the description of the long range, what it means to be a long range arrangement is going to be the same for 2D and 3D. So when we say that we need to have a 10 to the power 4 times extension in plane or in 2 dimension, this extension should be along just the plane. However, in 3 dimension, this 10 to the power 4 times extension should be along the overall volume. So that is the only difference when you consider the description of long range in 2 dimension and 3 dimension. So the overall extent of the repetition will be same both in 2 and 3 dimension. The long range, the quantification of this long range is going to be same in both 2 dimension and 3 dimension. However, in 2 dimension we are just repeating along a plane. However, on the other hand, in case of the 3-dimensional setup, or in case of an actual crystal, we are doing this translation, we are doing this repetition along the entire volume. So that is the only difference when we consider the term long range in the context of 2 dimension and in the context of 3 dimension. In 2 dimension, we are just repeating it along the plane. In case of 3 dimension, we are repeating it all over the volume or throughout the crystal. So with that understanding, let us now consider what it means to be regular arrangement in 3 dimension. So in case of the 2-dimensional consideration, when we restricted our understanding to 2 dimension, we saw that there were just 2 vectors that were necessary for our understanding and the angle between them in order to recreate or capture the arrangement of entities in a given plane. The requirement was just 2 vectors, the magnitude of these vectors and the angle between them. Now, when we extend it to 3 dimension, we need to include an additional vector. So far, we have just been considering these A and B vector for the lattice plane and the unit mesh. Now, what we essentially have is 3 vector, because we have now extended to, or we are now considering a 3-dimensional setup, the actual crystal how we see in the real world. So if you consider, or if you move into such a consideration, then we need 3 vectors. So these vectors, they have their magnitude, so that is what is represented here, and they have their definite angle between them that reflects, or that talks about, or that indicates its direction. So we have 3 vectors, the magnitude are mentioned here and the angle between them are expressed as alpha, beta and gamma. Now, like what we did for the 2-dimensional, essentially what we will be doing is we will be considering the different relation between the magnitude of these vectors and the angle between them. Now, when we consider, or when we extend our consideration of the square mesh through to a 3-dimensional setup, so we have a square mesh or a square unit mesh wherein the magnitudes are equal and the angle between them is 90 degree. When we extend it through 3 dimension, we end up with such a arrangement. Now, in the 2 dimension, we refer to this as a unit mesh. In case of 3 dimension, we refer to this as unit cell. And so that this unit cell just talks about the magnitude of the vectors and the angle between them. So it doesn't explicitly talk about the position of the atoms or the position of the entities. So this unit cell, it explicitly we are considering, we are not essentially considering the different positions of the atom. In case of in 2 dimension, the only place we were able to consider the 2 positions of the entities was in centered rectangular unit mesh. However, here in 3 dimension, we will explicitly focus on the relation between the magnitude of the vectors and the angles between them. We will not consider the individual positions of the atoms. Since we have 3 different vectors, that means we have 3 different magnitudes and 3 different angles to work with. We will not be explicitly considering the positions of the atoms, but rather the shape or the configuration of this unit cell that we see. Again, we will not be explicitly considering the positions of the atom. We will not be considering what would happen if we place an atom here, or what would happen if we place an entity here. Those things we will not be considering. We will just be focusing on these 2 aspects, that is the magnitude and the angle between these vectors. And when we do so, the resulting structures will not be the exact representation of what we see in a crystal, but it creates a category of crystal systems. So what we here observe is a cubic crystal system, and in this cubic crystal system, if we consider the positions of the atoms, that leads to a specific crystal structure. So it is important for us to differentiate a crystal system from that of a crystal structure. In case of a crystal system, we are explicitly focusing on the relation between the vectors A, B and C. In case of crystal structure, that is reflective of a specific mineral, we will be considering the positions of the atom. So that is the reason why I stated that, or it was stated previously that here we are not explicitly considering the positions of the atoms, because that will make the entire study of the crystal system even more specific and it will be even more elaborate. But as of now, we are restricting ourselves to different crystal system, not different crystal structures. So crystal systems are different from crystal structures, because in case of crystal systems, we are just considering the vectors and the angle between them. In case of crystal structures, you need to consider the positions of the particular positions of the entities. So with this distinction, let us look into the system that we arrive at when we extend the square unit mesh to 3 dimension. So in case of square unit mesh, we just have 2 vectors and 1 angle. Now when we extend it to 3 dimension, we have 3 vectors and 3 angles, and each of them are or each angles are equal to 90 degrees and the magnitude are also equal. So that ultimately leads to a cubic crystal system. So even though it is a crystal system, even though we are not explicitly considering the positions of the atoms, there is a mineral that is reflective of this cubic crystal system. It just comprises of entities that occupy just the corners of this unit cell here. So galena is one of the example of such a mineral that adapts a cubic crystal system. Now, based on the cubic crystal system, it is possible for us to arrive at different crystal structures. Some of you might already know about it. Again, when you place an atom or an entity here, you would arrive at a body-centered crystal structure, a body-centered cubic crystal structure. When you place an entity on this face, you would arrive at a face-centered cubic crystal structure. Now, again, we are just considering a crystal system, and when we are just considering the primitive cubic crystal system and just entities along the corners, even that kind of a configuration, that arrangement of the atoms is observed in galena. And the reason we are distinguishing galena from other cubic minerals that exhibit cubic crystal system is because in case of galena, what we have is a simple cubic crystal structure, meaning it's indicative of the cubic crystal system. It does not have, or it does not qualify, or it does not have any more complexity to it does not add any more intricacy to this crystal system. So you have a crystal system, and the arrangement of the entities in galena is just reflective of it, and that's the reason why we consider galena as an example for this cubic crystal system. So before moving further, it is vital for you to understand that crystal systems and crystal structures are different. Some of you might already know about it, but the crystal structures are the derivative of a crystal system. And crystal system, it does not consider the position of the atom, it just works around the magnitude and the angle between the vectors, whereas the crystal structures, they consider the positions of the atoms. Now galena is representative, or we consider galena as an example because it is reflective of the crystal system that we consider here. It does not consider, it does not have atoms occupying or ions occupying in this different spot. It's reflective of this crystal system here, which is a simple cubic crystal structure, and that is why we consider galena. Now let's move on to other possible relation between these 3 vectors that characterize the regular arrangement of the atoms in 3 dimension. Now, one other crystal system that is possible is rhombohedral, wherein the magnitude of the vectors still remain identical. They are equal to one another. However, even though the angle between them are also equal to one another, they are not equal to 90 degree. So the only difference between a cubic crystal system and a rhombohedral crystal system is that the angles between them, they are in both these crystal systems, the angles are equal. However, in cubic it is equal to 90 degrees, in rhombohedral it is not equal to 90 degrees. Now it is also interesting to note that the regularity in the arrangement of the entities is not reflective, or it is not observed only within the minerals, but it is also observed on the surface of the mineral. You can see that even in galena there is a definite shape or definite regularity that you can observe on the surface, and the same regularity can also be observed on the surface of the quartz. This is nothing but the reflection of the regular arrangement of the atoms within the mineral. So you have a definite regular arrangement of the atoms within the mineral, and when you observe it in the in its natural form, this regular arrangement is also observed on the surface, and that's the reason why we get these definite faces on the surface. You get a definite shape on the surface. So this regular arrangement of the atom, this is not something that is observed or that has influence on, of course it has a significant amount of influence on the behavior of the minerals. In addition to that, its observation is also, the way it appears on the nature is also influenced by the regular arrangement of the atom. Because of this regular arrangement of the entities within a crystal, you are able to see the regular shapes such as these, even though it appears in the nature. Even while it appears in the nature, we are able to observe such a faceted shape, such a regular shape. So now getting back to our crystal system, we have cubic and we have rhombohedral. They are more or less the same, only difference is the angle between them. Even though they are equal, they are not equal to 90 degrees in case of rhombohedral. Now moving on, we have a tetragonal crystal system wherein the relation between the magnitude of the vectors can be expressed in this manner. The magnitude of only one vector is different from the rest. However, the angle between them, they are reflective of the cubic crystal system. The angle between them are equal and they are equal to 90 degrees. So the only distinguishing factor between a cubic and a tetragonal is the magnitude of one vector is greater or less than the other two vectors. And we have an example for this tetragonal crystal system, a mineral that is reflective of the tetragonal crystal system, that is zircon, and the chemical composition of it can be found here. Now moving on, we have this hexagonal crystal system wherein hexagonal crystal system is similar to that of the tetragonal, as the magnitude of one of the vectors is different from that of the other two, which are identical. And in addition to that, or one of the characteristic feature of the hexagonal crystal system is that one of the angles between the two vectors, it assumes a definite value, and that value is 120 degrees. So hexagonal crystal structure or crystal system rather, it is similar to that of the tetragonal, and the difference is that one of the angles, it is not equal to 90 degrees, but it is equal to a specific value, that is 120 degrees. Other than that, tetragonal and hexagonal, they exhibit a similar form. Particularly, the magnitude of the one of the vector is different from the magnitude of the other two, which are equal. So we have A and B that are equal, but it is not equal to that of C. And the other distinguishing factor when compared to the only distinguishing factor when compared to tetragonal is that one of the angle is definite and it is 120 degree. Now moving on to the other crystal system, which is orthorhombic. In case of orthorhombic, the similarity when you compare it with the primitive one, that is the cubic crystal system, is that the angles between vectors are equal and it's equal to 90 degrees. However, the magnitude of the vectors are unequal. When you have a difference in the magnitude of the vectors, but the angles between them are equal and equal to 90 degrees, we have orthorhombic crystal system. And the example of a mineral that exhibits such an orthorhombic arrangement of entities, or that reflects this orthorhombic crystal system, is olivine, and the chemical composition of it can be found here. Now there is also an example for hexagonal, and that is zincite. Now it is important to note that, like what we saw for cubic and tetragonal, the regularity in the arrangement of the entities within the crystal also renders a definite shape on the to the mineral. Even though it appears naturally, we observe a definite shape. This is reflective of the regularity of the shape or the regularity of the arrangement of the entities within the crystals. So irrespective of the way the ions or atoms are arranged in a mineral, if they are regularly arranged, it is also reflected on the surface, and that's the reason why we get definite surface that are formed when the minerals are formed either on in a natural setting, or such minerals, or even if they are produced in a laboratory setup. Even though we won't refer to that as minerals, if we are able to produce such a mineral in a laboratory setup, in those cases also we will be able to observe a definite regular shape externally. In addition to the internal regular arrangement of the atoms, this internal regular arrangement of the atoms also gives a definite regular shape to the minerals. Now moving on, in addition to orthorhombic, so far we have considered I guess 5 different crystal systems. So we began with cubic, we moved on to orthorhombic, or rather rhombohedral, and then we consider tetragonal and hexagonal. Now we have orthorhombic. Now in case of orthorhombic, we saw that its similarity with cubic lies in the angle between the vectors, and the difference is that none of the magnitude of the vector are equal. And we saw there are minerals that are reflective of the crystal system, and example for that is olivine. Now let us move on to another crystal system that is observed in a given crystal or in a given mineral. This is referred to as the monoclinic. A monoclinic and the orthorhombic are similar in that none of the magnitude of the vectors are equal. Both in case of orthorhombic and in monoclinic, the magnitude of the vectors, none of this magnitude are equal. However, in case of monoclinic, you have two angles that are equal and equal to 90 degrees, and the third angle is unequal to or not equal to 90 degrees. So what characterizes the monoclinic crystal system is that none of the magnitude of the vectors that is used to define the crystal system is not equal. They are not equal, and in addition to that, even though the angle between them is 90 degree for two, the third angle is not equal to 90 degree. So gypsum is one of the example where the mineral exhibits the monoclinic crystal system. Now finally, the seventh crystal system that we observe in a mineral is the triclinic. So the only difference between a monoclinic and a triclinic is that in case of monoclinic, you have two angles between the vectors that are equal to 90 degrees and they are equal to each other. However, in case of triclinic, so both magnitudes and angles between the vectors are unequal. So magnitude are not equal with each other and the angles between them are also not equal with each other. So that is what we refer to as the triclinic, and the example or this triclinic crystal system is observed in kyanite mineral, and the chemical composition of it can be found here. So essentially, just by considering the magnitude and the angle between the three vectors that allow us to capture the regular arrangement of entities in a crystal, in a three-dimensional crystal, we were able to arrive at 7 different crystal systems. So essentially what we did is, we did what we did for, or we considered what we considered for a 2-dimension. We considered in case of 2-dimension, 2 vectors and the angle between them. We played around with it, we were able to arrive at different lattice. We did the same for 3-dimension, but here in order to capture the entire crystal, we consider instead of 2 vectors, we have considered 3 vectors. And when we consider the different combinations of these vectors, we were able to arrive at 7 different crystal systems. And there are minerals that reflects the arrangement of the entities that we observe in this crystal system. So to begin with, we began by considering cubic, and then we moved on to, so we began by considering cubic with equivalence in the magnitude and equivalence in the angle, and then we moved on to rhombohedral, wherein even though the equivalence in magnitude is sustained, the angle and also the equivalence in angles are sustained, they are not equal to 90 degrees. So that is what the differentiating factor between cubic and rhombohedral. And then we moved on to considering we considered the setup or the arrangement wherein the equivalence in the magnitude of the vectors is compromised, and we arrived at tetragonal. And when we have a definite angle that is assigned to one of the angles, so in case of alpha, beta, gamma, when gamma assumes 120 degree, we arrived at a different crystal system that is hexagonal. And when we consider, or when we totally compromised on the equivalence of the magnitude of vectors, we arrived at orthorhombic. And monoclinic is where the equivalence of the magnitude of the vector is compromised totally. However, we have 2 angles that are equal to 90 degrees and 1 which is not equal to 90 degrees. And finally, in case of triclinic, both the equivalence in the magnitude and also equivalence in the angle is totally compromised and the angles are not equal to 90 degrees. So these are the 7 crystal systems that are possible when we focus on the vectors that enable us to reconstruct a regular arrangement in 3 dimension. So in order to reconstruct a regular arrangement in 3 dimension, we need 3 vectors. Now just by considering the magnitude of these 3 vectors and angle between them, we are able to create 7 different crystal systems. And there are minerals that reflect each of these crystal systems, and we saw one example for each of these crystal systems. Now it is important for us to understand that we are not focusing on the derivative of these crystal systems, which are crystal structures. We have just considered the vectors alone that allows us, or that characterizes the regular arrangement. We have considered the different relation between the vectors and arrived at 7 different crystal systems. Now we saw in case of 2 dimension that this regular arrangement, it facilitates a symmetry. So the reason why we observe symmetry in two dimension is because in two dimension in a mineral the entities are regularly arranged. So that means even in three dimension we should be able to observe such symmetries. So now let us see the possible symmetries or how these symmetries look like in a three-dimensional condition. So we saw three different symmetries in two dimension. Even in this lecture we recapitulated it. We saw that there are we saw three different symmetries. One is translation, reflection and rotation. So translation is rather straightforward. You just have to repeat the unit mesh and you will be able to establish the entire lattice plane. Now it is also possible in three dimension. You have to just repeat this unit cell and you will be able to establish the entire crystal arrangement. So what we mean by that is this particular mineral here, when you look into its arrangement of the ions, what you will essentially see is repetition of this unit cell here. So if you repeat this unit cell over a volume, throughout the volume, you will end up with the arrangement of this arrangement of ion that is identical to this mineral here. Now since the translation symmetry is rather straightforward, we will move on to the other symmetry, which is the reflection symmetry. Now similar to that of the two-dimensional condition, we have definite planes wherein you can place the mirror and notice that one section of the unit mesh, one section of the motif is the reflection of the other. So here we see a specific mirror plane that is placed for a cubic crystal structure, and then you are able to observe notice that for this mirror plane, this section is the mirror image of the other. So rather it is conceivable for us that for a cubic crystal structure or a cubic crystal system, it is possible for us to observe the reflection symmetry by placing a mirror. By consider a specific plane, it is possible for us to observe the reflection symmetry. It's just the extension of the reflection symmetry that we observe in two dimension. Now, in addition to a cubic crystal structure, the similar reflection can also be observed in cubic crystal system. So even rather in hexagonal crystal structure. The reason I am using the term structure is because now we are considering a specific arrangement, and that's the reason why I am considering structure or using the term structure, because the systems are the words are they are rather contextual and they make an absolute sense only when you are talking in terms of the vectors. Now when you are considering just a unit cell, the appropriate term would be hexagonal crystal, or the appropriate term would be crystal structure. So when you are talking specifically about an arrangement, then the term is crystal structure. When you are talking in terms of the vectors and the angle between them, then we have to begin with the crystal systems, and that's the reason the term crystal structure is being used here. And now similar to, so what we observe here is similar to that of the hexagonal unit mesh having a specific mirror planes. We also have similar mirror planes for three-dimensional hexagonal crystal structure. Now these mirror planes are the planes wherein you can place the mirror and see one section of the three-dimensional crystal structure is the reflection or the mirror image of the other section. Now in addition to the reflection symmetry, it is also possible for us to observe that these three-dimensional crystal structures exhibit the rotation symmetry as well. So you have specific axis of rotation, and when you rotate it, you would see that we are able to assume the original form and also get back to the original position. So what we essentially have is, when we extend the regular arrangement in two dimension to three dimension, we arrive at different crystal systems, and in addition to the different crystal systems, we are able to arrive at the symmetries that we observe in two dimension. So with this, we will wind this lecture up. In the subsequent lectures, we will see what is the reason for the regular arrangement, and then we will see how the properties of the mineral are influenced by it. So let's see ourselves in the next lecture. Goodbye.